right, Squadron, in today's video, we're going to have a look at how we can actually implement the front-end logic using Inertia in Rails with ShadCN and React and all the good stuff in the app to create and list our webhooks. Let's have a look at what that looks like. So in our management page here, we're going to have this. We're going to create a new modal. We're going to show you how you can enter it all in and actually manage these so you can actually see them in here and then get rid of them when you're done, right? So let's have a look at how that's all done. Okay, so if you've been following along, you would have noticed that this has changed. So I've changed this bulk deliver by to webhook, not webhook event anymore. I think it just makes sense. So we're just creating, I was originally concerned about a naming collision, but this seems to work fine. So happy days, we're still getting everything working. So very happy with that. So today what I want to do is I actually want to come into Clipflow, and you can see this little page here that says webhooks coming soon. So what we're going to do here is actually, I'm going to show you how I go and actually implement the UI here, because I think this is a Inertia project running on Rails with React. So there might be some things here for you to learn along the way. So let's go. All right, so first things first, I am going to go into find this page. So it's in edit integrations. So that for me is in controllers v3, it's in organizations, and it is edit integrations, right? So you can see here what we're doing. We're passing in platform accounts. So that's this thing, the YouTube account, but then we've also got the organization. What we want to pass in now is we're also going to pass in the webhook endpoints, and that would be organization.webhook endpoints. Do we need to join anything on there? I don't think so. If we have a look, webhook endpoints, where are you? There you are, champion. So we've got organization where the version key is secret URL, enabled events is enabled. Nothing crazy there. Okay. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to pass it in down the bottom. We're going to go, so as a prop to Inertia, and we're going to say webhook endpoint dot serializer, which we don't have yet, dot render, and we're going to just pass in the webhook endpoints. Okay. We're not going to expand anything because there's nothing to expand. So that's happy. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into serializers. We're going to go in here. We're going to new file. We're going to go webhook endpoint serializer, right? And then I always just grab something that we've done. Copy, paste. It's faster than asking ChatGPT to do it, that's for sure. We're going to chuck it there. We're going to say now here, webhook endpoint. That's what it's, yep, webhook endpoint. Yep, good. So we've got created at. Now let's have a quick look at this model. I mean, you know what I could do? I'd probably just open the model. So we've got the ID, so we can grab these, just paste them into here where we're working. So we've got ID, enabled events. Don't have a data. Wish these were sorted, that'd be nice. So created at enabled events, ID is enabled. We do have organization ID. Let me just clean that up. We got organization ID, secret. Another thing, actually probably not a bad idea to have on these is like who created them. Would be good. Version key. Okay, so that's what we want there. We can add that who created it later so we can actually see who's the culprit of sending our data elsewhere. So we got our webhook endpoint serializer, and that's all happy. Okay, so that's that, and edit integrations. So that should be sweet. All right. So now we should have this on the other side. So let's jump into the front end. Okay. So to get started in the front end, we're going to go into front end v3. Everything's versioned. Components. And then this is living inside of, I've created an organization manager folder. And then in there, we've got the integrations, right? Here's webhooks. But what I want to do first is inside this folder, the integrations. And I'll just show you the flow, just so that it makes sense in your head. So first thing that we hit is going to be organizations, edit integrations, right? So if we just have, I'll just quickly give you a look at the controller. So the controller renders v3 pages, organizations, edit integrations, and then it passes the props, and I'm merging some props in together, which hits this page, the edit integrations page. You can see I've got the props. I'm only using some of them here, but I'm defining the page props here. So this is actually what we need to do too, is going to be webhook endpoints, because that's not going to come. And this is a webhook endpoint array. Oh, my keyboard is killing me. So we're going to go there. So nothing's happening here. I'm just passing this component. I'm not passing any props in here. You could do it from here. You could prop drill. I guess it gets a little bit messy. Or it's probably maybe clearer for some people. But like the flow goes controller, this page into this component. And then this component, I'm grabbing using the use page hook from Inertia to actually get the page props. So like it could be argued either way. Do whatever you feel feels good to you. So I need to now, you can see we're getting this like little Crimea River over here. We need to define that model, right? So it's going to be a webhook endpoint.ts. And then what we do here is I've defined this default model attribute. It's basically every attribute that every model in Rails could have or would usually have. So it's created at data is pretty standard, options is pretty standard, ID, updated at, and then the user ID who created it. So I defined that there. And then we're going to say webhook endpoint here, webhook endpoint. And then these are just the unique fields to that thing. So here, this is going to be defined, the type, always put that there. And then from here, it's basically whatever we define in our serializer, because this is mapped to the serializer. And that's why it's also versioned, because if we change, I mean, the serializers probably never change, but let me grab that. We got there. So we got created, that's default, that's default, that's default, right? So these things are not. So enabled events is basically going to be, we could define it here as a webhook event, but I actually think it's a noticed event. It's this. It's a noticed event type. That's what it is, right? So we actually want to export this now. That's what these will always be. Yeah, so that is that. So it's either going to be a comment created or, so I need to update that. That's out of date. But it could be that. It could be an array of that. But it could also be, remember, we also have the array, which just looks like this. It's either that all thing or it's an array of event types, right? So that's fine. Is enabled is a Boolean. Organization ID. I usually just pull in the organization here like this. I'll go organization and then I'll just say that's the organization ID. The secret, this is optional and it's a string. This is not optional. This is always needs to be there. It's a string. The version key at the moment is just V1, right? So that's all it can be. That looks all right to me, yeah? I think that's all we need. So now what I'll do is I'll grab this and we have an index file. So we export all the things from here. So we got webhook event endpoint. So we're just importing and exporting everything here, just so it's in one file. So you don't have to you can just import from models like that. Cool. This has stopped complaining. Happy days, all typed up, nice and happy. For all you TypeScript lovers out there, we got this. Good. Now what we can say here, because we're using the edit organization, you can see we got webhook endpoints there. So now we can just say webhook endpoints is equal to that. Bang. Okay. Now what we can do is just go in here and I'm just going to go console.log and see what we get. So we should, let's pop this guy out. Console. Let's have a look. There we go. We've got an array. I saw it there. Sneaky. Here. This is very small. Sorry. My apologies. There we go. So you can see here, we've got this one webhook endpoint, which we've created. There it is. We've got all this stuff. So now we can actually use that to come and show it in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it into this guy and just make sure to camel case this. This is the only thing I don't really like, and we're trying to figure out with ESLint also, because like in JavaScript, you don't usually use these kind of the naming with the snake case. So you can cast them all, which is annoying, but it's just, my one argument is like, whenever I see this, it's like, I know it's from Rails direct. It's the first entry and we're getting it off a page prop. That's it. Other than that, I think it would be nice, but I also don't want to camel case out of Rails because then it breaks the Rails convention. So it's a little bit of an awkward one, something we're still trying to figure out. So from here, we're going to hit webhook endpoints, and then this is going to be a webhook endpoint, and I love that, just added it for us. Great. We're not using org yet, but we will use the org when we create. So that's why we're not using that yet. Webhook endpoints, right? So this just says blank state item, right? So realistically, what we're going to do now is we can have a look at the blank state item here, and it can be a little bit more fun. So that's if no platform. So currently we're just rendering it at all always, but now what we're going to do is we're going to grab this code and just paste it in here. So we're basically going to loop through webhooks endpoints, right? So if we don't have any, we're going to render our blank state. So we're going to say no webhook endpoints, and then we can say this won't be a Google auth button. That will be a different button. And then we're going to say here, it's just webhook endpoint. So we're just looping through. If you're familiar with React, you know exactly what we're doing here, but we're just looping or mapping through. And then this will become a webhook endpoint tile or something. So we need to go create this guy because it's complaining. So this is where it's going to go a little bit funny because I don't know what it looks like. I think we could go with a tile because realistically, you're not going to have too many of these. So we don't want to create a massive list here. So we'll set that component up. So I'm just going to go up here. I'm going to go new webhook endpoint tile. I actually like the name webhook endpoint tile. I mean the webhook endpoint. I was umming and ahhing about that, but I think it makes more sense because it's very clear. So let's copy the integration. Where are you? What's it called? Is it YouTube? What is it called here? Let's go into YouTube. It's called the platform account tile. Let's copy that. Okay. I might just copy this entire thing and I'm going to put it in here. And then I'm just going to go Command-Shift-L and I'm going to change this all to webhook endpoint tile. Here we're going to go delete. What's this one do? That's just the button that drops it down. Okay. Now, another thing we need to do, so as you go, you can see that like I open up more, like the rabbit hole gets deeper, right? So we are going to change this here to webhook endpoint tile, import that. This is actually one thing that I like about React. Like I know that people are like, there's too much stuff going on, but I like knowing what's coming in. Like I like that, or JavaScript. Like I do know, I like import, export. Here we're going to say, anywhere that we got platform account, I'm just going to change this to webhook endpoint, right? So that comes in. Anywhere we have this, we're going to change that to webhook endpoint as well, like that. We need to define this hook. See, it doesn't exist, so that's fine. The reason I set up the hooks is so I can create like, this callback. So I would just pull that out. I don't have to define the whole callback every time. And I create a whole bunch of logic about working with that entity in one place. So if we want to change something, if the delete route changes, I don't have to come into every file and change it. I just change it in the hook endpoint or in the hook. Job done. So we don't have settings coming out of there. So we've got the delete. This will remove the endpoint and you will need to re-add it to add it again. Sweet. So we don't have settings here. So this icon is always going to be the same. And what's a good idea for a webhook endpoint, right? So this is where we'd have to go to font awesome and we go, so this is going to be hard. So it's like HTTP. Let's just see what we get. Webhook. Amazing. Okay. Thank you. That's great. Webhook. That's made that decision really fast. So the webhook name, this is something we should probably have, to be honest. We should probably have a name for the webhook. We don't have a title. So we call, in this system, everything is usually called title. So we don't have that here. So there's probably something. So either we could show the URL first and then have the enabled events. That's probably something you want to see. Like, do you want to name them? I think when you deal with a webhook, I think it actually it is actually a little bit better to have a name. So let's go create a migration quickly. So Rails G migration, we're going to say title to webhook endpoints. Send it. Here we are. So what we're going to do, we're going to say add column to webhook endpoints. And then we're going to say it's going to be a string and it's going to be called title. And then what we also want to do while we're here is I want to also add I think it'll be belongs to, and this will be a user. I think you could do add belongs to. Let me just check. Yes. Yep. And that's going to index it as well. And that's just a string. Okay. So let's run that migration and just see what happens. Rails DB migrate. Go. Oh, title. Okay. Wait, what have I done? I think it's actually the other way around. Yeah. Type title doesn't exist. Done. Okay. Sweet. Let's have a look. So if we go here and we go here now, we should have user ID and title. Okay. So that's cool. So we need to change a few things there also now. So let's go into our front end and our models. And I'm sure there's probably a way here to just do all this jazz. And then we also have user ID, which is on the default. So that's fine. And then on the serializer, webhook endpoint serializer, the STU title, user ID, we also need S, alphabetical. I could just hit that, F9. All right, we got that. We could expand the user now. I imagine this is probably going to be something we need to do. There we go. Let's grab that. Webhook serialize, endpoint serialize. We're going to attribute user, if expand include user, and we're going to say webhook endpoint point.user. Yeah. So only if that happens, then we're going to render the user. And we also want to say in here, we also want to have expand in here. And we have this little expand children, and we want to pass in basically user. Yeah. So anything that's like, if you pass in user.profile image, what will happen here is we'll strip the user part off and pass profile image into user serializer as an array, the dot notation. So all good. So that's sweet. And then in here, we're going to expand. So this is in the controller. We're going to go in here now and go expand user, right? Because we want to know who the user was. Let's see if that doesn't crash anything. Where are we? I need to run the server. That helps. All right. Refresh that guy. No, what do we got here? Okay. Yep. So what's happened there is we don't have the model set up. So the model needs to tell everyone that it belongs to a user, has many, belongs to, and this is a user. And here we can say, I think it's default. Let's just see how we do this again. This one. That's what we want. Belongs to user. right? So we're going to always set the current using the current user if we have it. So if we have that, boom, set it in. Great. So that's set. This should work now because it's defined. Work. Okay, failed to import use. That's fine. Got that problem. We know that. Sick one. All right. So got the webhook endpoint tile. We need to define the hook. So let's go. All right, so with our custom hooks here, we're going to go new, we're going to go use webhook endpoint.ts. Again, I always like to just use the last one that I did. So what would that be? Let me find one. So I think this use channel's pretty new. Okay, so let me grab it and then I'll walk through. First, I'm just going to quickly update this. So anywhere that it says channel, I'm going to update to webhook endpoint. These are just templates. Like you could create like in my past job, or not in my past company, we actually set this up so you could just run a script and it just set everything up for you and you didn't have to update it. And that was fine. But for now, it's all easy. I copy paste, honestly, is so fast. Oh my gosh, my keyboard though. That is a different problem. Emit, and we're going to go webhook. So basically a new one is just is all the same props. It's just emitting the ID and actually the dates as well. So we're going to export type here. Okay. Great. I also want to add that into the defaults here. So let's just go quickly add that in. So new, right. Okay. So what do we have? We've got webhook. Let's just try and find anywhere where we have channel, right? Yeah, there's a few times. So this is a tough one because it's a bit of a mixture. Let's just change this all to webhook endpoint. Okay. And we don't need the default because we don't have that function, right? So let me just clean that up. So we don't need that as a default. We won't have that. But what you can see what's happening in here. So we've got the create route. So it's the create webhook endpoint, and it uses the inertia form. So the nice thing here, again, like I said, it just allows you, if we ever said, oh, we don't want to use inertia form, we want to use a different way of submitting to the DB or to the API, you just change it here, right? Everywhere else will work, right? So this is all happy days. Then the deletes, doing all the checks, like if we have an ID, then we delete, then we refresh this. So the thing with inertia is really cool is when you submit a request, you can say only fetch these props again. So it's like, I know that I've just deleted a webhook endpoint. So now go and fetch the webhook endpoints again so I can get the new data, right? So realistically, this would look like, it would be the same casing as we provided in the controller. And that's how you map it back. So if you're looking at this, that key there, that's what you want to refresh, right? So where is that hook now? Here. So we just need to update that, wherever that's there. And then obviously an update route, we want to actually update the webhook itself. If we had that, I usually try and have these in alphabetical order. That's just me, a little bit of OCD. So we got this. So the same thing when we create, we want to go and fetch the list of webhook endpoints again because we've created a new one. So we want to update the view with the latest props. It's just very fast because we're only fetching the JSON we need. We're not rendering full pages and stuff to get it back. So we've got the delete. So we've got create, update, delete in this hook. So we provide the webhook endpoint, sort those bad boys. And then what are the default params? So you can provide them here. So we've got title, organization ID. This bit's a bit of a moot point, I think. It's just kind of providing the default form, but then I also spread in the webhook endpoint that you provide. So this is usually, I'll provide it like an object. I'll say like, here's the organization ID. But I just kind of provide these just so it's not like, this is what basically the required params. I usually put them here just so you know. So for us, what else is required in that? So having said that, the URL's also key there, right? It just gives an inertia form an idea of what props or params are valid quickly, but we are supplying this anyway, so that also gives with the types. Enabled events is also key, right? So we want that, and I'm going to default that to a value, right? Because like I just want to always have that on. Just sick. Let's just go. We can actually, that functionality can be added later. So here when we're transforming, so when we submit, we actually transform this into the Rails param that it's expecting, and the same with update. We need to transform it into the right payload. We don't need the default one, but delete, boom, 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 boom. And then we got the end, like the return type. So if you ever pass that payload around, you can do it. Sick. That's done. All right. This is now valid. So I'm going to close that and then open it again. And close these off as well because it's making a mess for me. All right. Now we should be able to go into the webhook endpoint tile again. Use webhook. That does exist, champion. We just created it. Yeah, that's definitely there. Okay, just refresh yourself and you'll pick it up. Cool. All happy days. So now we have webhook.title, or we can just say webhook. if we don't have one. And we got the URL, but we're going to force people to set the title. Okay, let's see what this page is complaining about now. We still got a problem. We have got a syntax error. Oh, okay, yep, that. We don't have a route. So we need to create a new webhook platforms route down the bottom here. Thumbnails, boom. So we're going to go webhook endpoints. And it's only, oh my gosh. See, whenever I type fast, it just double types. Create, update, destroy. That's all we want for now. Create, update, destroy. Yep. Just those three. Okay, if we refresh the page, it should refresh that and it should pick it up. It's also still going to be wrong though, because we just have to import the right thing. So this is coming from our cool little helper that creates the routes from the Rails endpoints, which is sick. The webhook endpoints path, and then here it is webhook endpoint. So that's a singular with an ID. This is the plural, so for create, this is for update and destroy. Let's refresh that now. There we go. That's in, right? So now we can see here's our webhook. So what we could do from here is the configuration step, like how we want to handle that. But I just wanted to quickly show you how you quickly, as fast as we can go, is how we could just render these out. So what we'll do now, though, before we get into this, because I think we might inline edit or something. I have to talk to the design team before I go too crazy on here. But I just wanted to show, this is sick. I'm really happy with this. It's showing you there. But what we want to now do is create this new webhook modal. This is the final little piece of the puzzle, just so I can show you how that happens. All right, so to do this, the nice thing is we have a code base now that's, I don't have to create everything from scratch, which is really cool and fun. So inside of our components, we have modals, and this is where I create all our modals, right? So you can see we've got a few here already. But what we want to do here is now a new webhook endpoint modal. Index.tsx. Boom. Now, what does that have? It's a bit hard to imagine it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and create something that maybe like a status modal. I'm just trying to think of something that looks similar. Maybe something like this. It's pretty basic, I think. So let's have a look. So statuses look like this. Very simple, right? It's literally just the one field. Nothing too exciting. Or we've got the channel modal, which is probably what I'll use. I'll use the channel modal because it's probably closer to what we want. So we'll grab that, paste that in, and then just replace this with a new webhook endpoint modal. So it's going to save webhook endpoint. And this is just copy pasting, right? We're just going through here and just updating all this stuff. The reason we have this form here is because we put the button outside of the form. It's a submit button that lives outside, very standard HTML stuff, but it's things we kind of forget when we're dealing in this world. But because the button is outside the form and we want it to just submit that without there's like no on click or stuff like that. In order to do that, you just label the form there and you have the ID on the form itself. And as long as those two match up, HTML's smart enough to figure it out. So we don't have this URL lookup thing. Again, let's go through here. So wherever we have channel, we're going to change it to a webhook endpoint. We don't have this unfurling. We don't need it. What else do we have? We don't have a content type. There's no such thing. We don't organization selector. We can leave that. We can leave. We don't need that. The title input ref is so that we can automatically focus on the title when you open up the modal, which is cool. Create more, sick. Here we're going to use web endpoint, and then this is just wherever we have that, we're going to call it webhook endpoint, right? And we're passing in default params. So when we launch this modal, we can pass in like, this is the org. If we want to pass a title, any kind of stats we want to pass in, or props we can. So that's really cool. For now, we're just going to have that, and I'm also just pull out the URL. We don't need this. We don't need this. Is it title? Is this valid? So this is what we want. We want to make sure we have a title, a URL. Just a little bit of manual checking. You could use something way more powerful here, like Zod, I think is what you could probably use. The submit function. The reason we have the submit function out here is because if I want to use the same thing for when I use hotkeys, when I go Command Enter, because we have that shortcode. So I have this basically just there, so I can use it there or on the form. So submit create form, we don't need that. And then what we do is we reset. Right, so if create more is not enabled, I close the modal. Otherwise, I just reset the fields and focus on them again. So you can just go bang, do, bang, do. Makes it easy. Organization select, new webhook endpoint, create a new webhook endpoint. This is hidden, so you can't even see it, but it's just for ARIA. So this is the endpoint name, right? So that's just you giving it, we could even call it webhook name. I think this is important because if you create multiple, eventually, you want to know like this one goes to this platform, this one goes to this platform, and this. It just makes it easier to read, I guess. And in here, we're going to have the URL. So this is the URL. Those are the most important things, right? I mean, the name and then the URL. And then these attribute selectors, which we'll add later, which will be like, what would the attributes be in this case? Would be like enabled events. So here I'd let you select them. I go like click, click, click and select them. And the secret is probably something we could also add for now. We could chuck that here and just call it secret, right? Placeholder, no, I don't want that. You don't need that. It's very straightforward. Secret, secret, secret. That needs to be destructured from the form. So we can create that, pull that out. Sweet. So we got the webhook name. And like, this is also something like, if the secret is like top secret, I don't know if it really is. It's more just for verifying the two, but you could store this as an encrypted credential if you wanted to. I don't actually know if that's really required at this stage. Switches for create more, save webhook endpoint. Great. I think that's pretty much it. We don't need the use state because that was for something else. Wonderful. All right. Now let's go and add this in so we can actually launch this modal. Okay. So what we need to do now is jump into our little, so we're going to find the component, right? So I don't even remember the name. It's in here. So inside of webhooks, it's in here. Okay. So what we want to do in here is import new webhook modal, endpoint modal. And from here, we want to go like this. So the way I've set this up is it wraps the ShadCN modal and I've created like a special component called dialog modal. And from here, you can see I've wrapping the provider and I've got my own kind of stuff here. And then I've got the trigger and we pass that in, right? And it's an as child. But this is the ShadCN stuff, the dialog, and then we're wrapping and created our own. So we're going to go here, trigger equals, and then it's going to be the button, right, that we already set up. So we just move that into the trigger. I really like how these modals work. I've worked with so many modals in the past and it was always really annoying. And then here we can pass into our thing, default params, right? So what are we going to pass in? We're going to pass in the organization ID because we want it to be set to the organization ID that we're currently in. If you were launching this in a place that you didn't have that context, you wouldn't be able to pass it in. So we're going to pass the org ID in, which is great. And then we also actually want to have a new button down here, which launches the same modal, but it has a different, it's not a button like this. So we don't need that Google button. And this is not a link. So I think it's an outline, new webhook. Okay. So if we close this off and now go into integrations, please don't crash. There we go. We're not seeing the blank state, but let me just copy that URL. Oh, we're still running it, so that's fine. Let's see if we can delete this. No, it's not going to work because I haven't created the controller. It's going to happen. So if we hit new, here we go. Webhook name, URL, secret. And we could set that to a URL field. This probably makes sense too. New webhook endpoint. Where is the URL? Type. Is it URL? I don't know if that actually is, but there's a secret. And then here's the attributes, which I'll add later. Create more. It's not enabled. Wonderful. Okay, so that's the modal launching. Very, very cool. But what we need to do now, standard, we need to do the dance. And you can see I don't scaffold any of this because sometimes it creates too much noise for me. And then like you end up having to undo it all or like delete it. Because I also don't want code hanging around that's not actually used. And I find sometimes with scaffolding that happens. And it just creates complexity and overhead that you don't need. So what I'll do is I'll quickly just copy things across. So V3, and then we're going to have webhook endpoints. Man, by the end of this video, I've said this word so many times. Endpoints, set webhook endpoint, only update and destroy. That's all we want. And here, what we're going to do is we'll have the update method. So this is webhook endpoints. But we're going to need to we're going to have to set up this as well, which is the policy to make sure you're actually allowed to do this. Make sure you're doing this, everyone. Otherwise, people can just do whatever they want in your system. It's not what we want. We do this so we make sure that, like, obviously privacy is super important for us. And I think it should be for everyone. So make sure you do that. Webhook endpoints. Here we go. Now I can just go through here, change that. So authorize it and then destroy it and then send them back. So this is how Inertia works. You always get redirected back. It handles that all magically, which is really nice. Okay, statuses. Let's get the create route here from statuses. I actually think the skill you need to master in when you write code is copy paste. To be honest, I think that is the skill. I do it so much. Created here, inertia point errors. Great, wonderful. All right, so then down the bottom, obviously we've got our standard song and dance down here with the safe params. So set webhook endpoint there, that becomes that becomes webhook. And then it's webhook endpoint params. Okay, what do we want to allow in? We want to allow in title. We want to allow in URL. We want to allow in secret. We want to allow organization ID. We want to allow enabled events. And this is an array of any string. So we move that below. It has to always go below. Version key, we're not allowing that right now. Secret enabled is enabled. Is enabled something we want to allow, because you can set that in the title. Okay, that looks good. All right. That should now allow us to actually do something if we've done it all right. Yep. All right. So first and foremost, let's see if we can delete this guy. Policy. Knew that was going to happen. All right, let's do the policy quickly. So we're using pundit, or however you say it. Policies. We're going to have a new webhook endpoint policy. So you could, I think, after repeating this so many times, there would probably be a point where you just automate this with like a little script. So just like set up new policy. And I used to have that as well. And maybe that's a cool video to do actually. Webhook endpoint policy. So we don't care about self. What I like to do here is I usually create like a manage block. And then I'm like, who can manage this, right? So organizations user. So in our system, you can manage things of an organization if you're the admin of the organization. So the record, this is why I have the organization field on a record rather than delegating, because you don't have to do joins all the time. So I'm going to say, if you're the admin of that organization, you can do it. Or if you're the manager. So we have a concept of where there is like an organization that manages other organizations, they can also manage that. So what we want to do here is basically def create, and then it's just manage, right? All of these are going to be like this. Manage, and then this is going to be update or destroy. And they're all the same. Let's manage. Yep. And then down here we have the scope. So what kind of records can you access? Admin, obviously a system admin can have access to everything. But here, if you're an organizations user, we're going to join. So this one's actually a little bit simpler. It's just like the status. It's like this. So that was if you're an organization user. But here it's like wherever the organization is in your user organizations, you can see those things. Easy. So what we could also do there is like have a policy scope if we had an index route, but we don't. I'm not using that right now. Sweet. Let's go here. Try again. There we go. Boom. Now we got our end state, our blank state, sorry. So, okay. So let's see if this actually works. We're going to say a new webhook. And in here, I'm going to copy this. Oh, come on, man. I just want to get this. How do I grab it? Just do that. Paste that. Secret is secret. We need to also create functionality to be able to send that, by the way. So if we hit save now, please work. There we go. Webhook endpoint was successfully created. There's our webhook endpoint. And what we also did is we had enabled events all. So that just instantly worked because I'm just setting that for now. I'm not going to add complexity right now to show you how to do that. Awesome. So there's the secret set. So what we could do is we just have to decide how we send the secret. So that's where it can get complex because like depending on the other user's system, they might expect it in a certain way. But I think what we can do is we can have a look at just how other people are sending the secrets. And I'll just copy that, to be honest. Just make it simple. Try and find some uniform standard. It's probably like X API secret or something. But that's it, right? I just wanted to show you how we actually implement the front end of the webhook stuff. So now we have that set up. The user can see it. And then next time I'll actually try and have a look at how we can pull through the events because I think it's important to show the webhooks here. And then we'll probably have like the event log below. So hope you enjoyed that one. It was a long one, but we'll catch you on the next one.